Breaking news out of the U.S. now, where President Donald Trump has just announced the closure of the airspace above Venezuela.
President Trump telling airlines this morning to consider the airspace above Venezuela.
Donald Trump says the airspace above Venezuela is to be closed.
Stop scrolling. What you are about to hear is not a prediction. It is not a rumor. It is happening right now, and the implications are terrifying. 72 hours ago, a notification appeared on Truth Social that effectively acts as a declaration of war. President Trump did not hold a press conference. He did not address Congress. He simply issued an order that has turned an entire nation into a prison. The order was blunt. It was addressed to airlines, pilots, and traffickers. And the message was absolute. The airspace above and surrounding Venezuela is now closed. Not restricted. Not sanctioned. Closed in its entirety. Think about what that actually means. A sovereign nation, sitting on the largest oil reserves on the planet, has just been placed under a total atmospheric blockade. No commercial flights in. No private jets out. If you fly, you are a target. They told you Operation Southern Spear was just about stopping drugs. They told you the battleships in the Caribbean were there for regional stability. They lied. While the mainstream media was distracted by domestic scandals, the United States Navy was quietly encircling an entire country. The trap has snapped shut. This is a blockade, and historically, a blockade is the first act of war. The question isn't if the conflict will start. The question is why nobody is telling you that we are standing on the edge of a new war in the Western Hemisphere. A war that involves Russian bombers, Chinese debt, American mercenaries, and a $15 million bounty on a head of state. The pieces are on the board. The airspace is dead silent, and the first missile is already chambered. Welcome to Rush Report. Today we expose the secret war plan, the private army waiting in the wings, and the terrifying reason why the United States is finally coming for Venezuela. Let's look at the reality on the water. This is what the Pentagon doesn't want you to focus on. For months, under the radar, the U.S. Southern Command has been executing one of the largest naval build-ups in Latin American history. They call it Operation Southern Spear. On paper, the mission statement is harmless. They say it is a counter-narcotics operation. They say they are hunting drug subs and speedboats moving cocaine north. It sounds safe, doesn't it? Just protecting the border. Just stopping the poison. But you don't need the USS Gerald R. Ford, the largest and most advanced aircraft carrier in human history, to stop a drug boat. You don't need F-35 Lightning stealth fighters to track a smuggler. And you certainly don't need to close the entire airspace of a nation to catch a cartel leader. You do those things when you are preparing to decapitate a regime. The Caribbean Sea has essentially been turned into an American lake. We are seeing destroyers, literal combat ships, and Coast Guard cutters forming a literal iron ring around Venezuela's northern coast. This is not law enforcement. This is a siege. Nicolas Maduro knows it. In Caracas, the panic is setting in. Intelligence reports confirm that the Venezuelan military has been placed on high alert. Anti-aircraft batteries, Russian-made S-300 systems, are being moved from the interior to the coast. They aren't looking for drug planes. They are looking for American stealth bombers. Why now? Because Trump's order was specific. He didn't just ban commercial flights. He addressed the order to traffickers. He explicitly linked the government of Venezuela to the drug trade in a way that legally justifies military action. By designating the airspace as close to traffickers, the rules of engagement change. Any aircraft leaving Venezuela can now be classified as a threat. Any plane entering can be shot down. The bridge to the outside world has been burned. Maduro is trapped. His generals are trapped. And when you trap a desperate regime, they don't surrender. They lash out. To understand why this invasion is legal in the eyes of Washington, you have to look at the paperwork. Wars today aren't declared by Congress. They are declared by lawyers. Just days before the airspace closure, the Trump administration made a move that went largely unnoticed by the public but sent shockwaves through the intelligence community. They officially designated the Cartel de los Soles, the Cartel of the Suns, as a foreign terrorist organization. This sounds like a standard anti-crime move until you realize who the United States claims runs this cartel. They don't claim it's run by a criminal in a hideout. They claim it is run by the Venezuelan military high command and Nicolas Maduro himself. Do you see the legal trap? By labeling the government of Venezuela as a narco-terrorist organization, the United States is no longer dealing with a diplomatic rival. They are dealing with terrorists. And under U.S. law, the president does not need congressional approval to strike terrorists. This designation is the golden ticket. It allows for drone strikes. It allows for special forces raids. It allows for the seizure of assets anywhere in the world. It effectively removes Nicolas Maduro's diplomatic immunity. In the eyes of the Pentagon, he is no longer a president. He is a target just like Osama bin Laden or Qasem Soleimani, and there is a price tag to prove it. $15 million. That is the bounty the Department of Justice has placed on Maduro's head. Think about the psychological pressure that creates. Every general standing next to Maduro, every bodyguard, every chef in his palace knows that one bullet or one phone call to the CIA could make them rich for generations. The airspace closure amplifies this pressure. If a general wants to defect, if they want to take the money and run, they can't fly out. The only way to survive now is to end the regime from within, or wait for the Americans to come and do it for them. The terror designation was the setup. The blockade is the squeeze. And the next step is the strike. But here's the twist that CNN will never cover. This might not be a traditional war. The United States Army might not be the first boots on the ground. The optics of American soldiers dying in South America are bad for politics. So, what is the alternative? Privatization. Enter Erik, the founder of Blackwater, the man who built the modern private military industry. For over a year, a movement known as Casi Venezuela, which translates to Almost Venezuela, has been raising millions of dollars from donors around the world. Their goal is open and public: to topple the Maduro regime. Erik has been incredibly vocal about this. He has argued time and time again that the United States shouldn't risk American lives when there are professionals willing to do the job. He has suggested raising the bounty on Maduro to $100 million, claiming that such a prize would make the regime collapse instantly through betrayal. But Casi Venezuela is more than just a fundraising website. It is a signaling mechanism. It tells thousands of former Special Forces soldiers, mercenaries, and Venezuelan exiles that there is a contract waiting for them. Now, connect the dots. You have a private army being funded in the shadows. You have a U.S. naval blockade preventing the Venezuelan military from receiving supplies or escaping. And you have a closed airspace that grounds the Venezuelan Air Force. If the sky belongs to the U.S. Navy, and the sea belongs to the U.S. Coast Guard, the ground is wide open for a private incursion. This creates a terrifying new model of warfare. If a private army invades Venezuela, can the United States claim plausible deniability? They can say, "Those aren't our soldiers. That isn't our operation." Washington can simply hold the door open by enforcing the no-fly zone while the mercenaries do the dirty work inside. It is the perfect shadow war, funded by donations, sanctioned by silence, and protected by the most powerful military on Earth. Reports indicate that training camps near the Colombian border have been active. The rhetoric from the Casi movement has shifted from political pressure to military preparation. The timer is ticking, and with the airspace now closed, the window for this private invasion has just opened wide. However, there is a massive problem with this plan. Venezuela is not alone, and this is where the conflict threatens to spiral into World War III. For the last decade, Nicolas Maduro has handed the keys to his country to two specific superpowers, Russia and China. Just days ago, in late November, high-level meetings took place between Russian Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Chernyshenko and Venezuelan officials. They didn't just meet for a photo op, they solidified a new 10-year strategic partnership treaty. This treaty is not vague. It covers defense, intelligence, and energy. Russia has explicitly stated that it stands with Venezuela in defending its sovereignty against her external threats. We have already seen Russian nuclear-capable bombers land in Caracas in the past. We know there are Russian military advisors on the ground, manning the radar systems and the S-300 air defense batteries. If the United States, or its private proxies, attacks Venezuela, they aren't just shooting at Venezuelan conscripts. They are potentially shooting at Russian military personnel. Think about the geopolitical nightmare. We are already fighting a proxy war with Russia in Ukraine. If American-made missiles start killing Russian soldiers in Caracas, the conflict expands instantly. And it's not just Russia. China has invested over $60 billion in Venezuela. They effectively own the country's future oil production as repayment for massive loans. China has a policy of non-interference, but they will not stand by and watch their biggest investment in the Western Hemisphere go up in smoke. Venezuela has become a Russian-forward operating base in America's backyard. It is the Cuban Missile Crisis in slow motion. Putin uses Venezuela as leverage. If the U.S. pushes too hard in Ukraine, Russia pushes back in Venezuela. By closing the airspace, Trump is calling Putin's bluff. He is cutting off the air bridge between Moscow and Caracas. It is a direct challenge to the Kremlin. Are you willing to fly a supply plane through a U.S. no-fly zone and risk starting a war? So far, Moscow is silent, but silence in geopolitics is usually the calm before the storm. Now, let's talk about the real motive. It's never just about freedom. It's never just about drugs. It's always about the barrel. Venezuela sits on the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Larger than Saudi Arabia, larger than Russia, larger than the United States. Underneath that socialist decay lies an ocean of black gold. But it's not just any oil. It is heavy crude. This is specific, dense oil that American refineries in the Gulf Coast are designed to process. For years, American refineries have been starving for this specific type of oil, forcing them to buy from other sources at higher prices. Look at the data from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. As of late November 2025, the reserve holds about 11 million barrels. That sounds like a lot, but historically, it is low. We drained the tank to keep gas prices down in previous years. Now we need to refill it. Trump has a doctrine of energy dominance. He cannot allow China to control the energy supply of the Western Hemisphere. He cannot allow Russia to dictate the flow of oil in South America. By closing the airspace and choking the ports, the United States is effectively seizing control of the energy assets. The blockade starves the regime of cash. Venezuela sells 90% of its exports as oil. If the tankers can't leave, the money doesn't come in. Without cash, Maduro can't pay his mercenaries. He can't pay the police. And most importantly, he can't pay the food importers. The blockade is designed to break the economy completely, forcing the military to choose between starvation and a coup. If the regime falls, that oil flows back to the West. American companies like Chevron are already positioned to step in and modernize the fields. The prize is trillions of dollars in energy wealth. But if the regime stands and the war drags on, global oil prices will react to the uncertainty. We could see a spike that destroys the American economy right as it tries to recover. This is a gamble with the global energy market, and the stakes are absolute. So, why should you care? Why does a closed airspace in South America matter to a family in Ohio or London or Toronto? Because chaos creates movement, and movement creates crisis. If civil war breaks out in Venezuela, if the Legacy mercenaries go in, or if the U.S. Marines land, we aren't talking about a small skirmish. We are talking about the total collapse of a nation of 28 million people. Maduro has already weaponized migration. In the past, he has emptied prisons and encouraged exodus to destabilize the region. A full-scale conflict now would trigger a migration wave that makes the previous caravans look like a trickle. Millions of people would flee north, heading straight for the U.S. border right when the administration is trying to close it. It would be a humanitarian and political disaster that no wall can stop. And then there is the retaliation, asymmetric warfare. If the U.S. strikes Caracas, does Venezuela's ally Iran activate sleeper cells? Do cyber attacks hit the U.S. power grid? Do we see attacks on American oil infrastructure in the Gulf? We are entering a phase of hybrid warfare where the battlefield isn't just a jungle in South America. It is your gas station, your grocery store prices, and your cybersecurity. The war machine is profitable for the elites. The defense contractors will make billions restocking the missiles. The oil majors will make trillions securing the fields. But the cost is always passed down to the taxpayer. The order has been given. The pilots have been warned. The ships are in position. President Trump has drawn a red line in the sky. He has told the world that Venezuela is closed for business. This is the final squeeze before the hammer drops. The mainstream media will tell you this is just politics. They will tell you it's just posturing. But look at the hardware in the Caribbean. Look at the $15 million bounty. Look at the private army gathering at the border. You don't assemble a war machine just to look at it. You assemble it to use it. The world is watching the Middle East. Distractions are everywhere. But the real explosion is about to happen right here in the Americas. The fuse is lit. Do not get caught off guard when the news breaks. This is Rush Report. We tell you what others are too afraid to say. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and prepare yourself. Because the truth is coming at the speed of life.